designated previously, and that's because that was really part of that subdivision. So I would think we ought to look at that and say, do we really want to start putting commercial properties at the end of every circle? And is that the proper place to put commercial properties? We have other areas in Washington that work perfectly for it. It would fit in. You know, I look at Heidemann Steel. It wasn't in a neighborhood. Spilsbury's not in a neighborhood. These other mortuaries aren't in neighborhoods. So why would we start putting them in here? And even though I raised the issue with the church, this is different than a church and a school. Those are not commercial facilities, not commercial properties. This is a commercial enterprise, and so I just don't think it's consistent with our general plan, nor is it consistent with the way I think we want to start planning things to mix commercial right in the middle of residential. We already have limitations on people who can do babysitting out of their home or other things like that. They have to come get special permits if they're going to do business out of their home. Why do we want to put a business right in at the end of a neighborhood? But so that's my view on it. I think it's inconsistent with what's there.
Anybody else?
I struggled with this. I sat in on the planning commission meeting on this, and I've wrestled with it for a month and a half, because I see both points of view. But I believe the one thing I've tried to be consistent on as I've been on the council is trying to change the use of something after people have moved into an area. And I do believe it probably would be beautiful, but I believe that it is the way it's set apart. When we looked at the general plan a few years ago, we looked at that lower piece, that it was kind of offset from the rest of the neighborhood because it was down lower, that it could fit as neighborhood commercial if the access issues were worked out. The upper part, we believed, was a residential area, and as I look at it and as I've driven it, I still believe that it's a residential neighborhood, and so that's where I believe that I will vote this evening. So.
Is the traffic a concern for you? Because we've learned
Yes,
that
I do believe
we've learned that the traffic study, as according to the counts, would be potentially less than even if the full circle were developed out residentially. We've learned that it's potentially the equivalent of three homes.
I believe that, and that's probably true. But the other thing you have to look at is you won't have, with homes, you have people who live there on a regular basis going to to those homes every day. With this, you'll have new people going to it on a regular basis, driving maybe a little erratically as they're trying to find their way around. You don't have the same, your driving patterns are different if you live there, you know the neighbors. If it's just some business that you're going to, you may not drive the same way.
What are your thoughts about the old Washington Fields Road being there? Originally would have backed up against it, and now the city's created a situation to create the road with a gap in the property. And the property owner, although he's stated he could make more money developing it residentially, feels like the highest and best, and frankly his preferred use is a funeral home there. Does his own opinion regarding his property that he's had been adversely affected by the city, does that carry any weight into, I guess I would speak to the entire council, because he's been adversely affected by change just like anybody else, and he's trying to do what he feels like is best, maybe if it's not the best monetarily for him.
Yeah, I think though we're all adversely affected to the extent zoning applies. You know, that's part of what zoning does. We have property rights, but those property rights are conditioned upon the zoning that's there. And right now, this is not even in the general plan to be used commercial, and the whole setup is residential. And I can see wanting to get the highest and best use out of it. But if I want to turn my home into a funeral home, I could say that's my highest and best use. It's a nice home to come and use, but I don't think the neighbors will let me in my residential neighborhood turn it into that.
It does butt up against commercial, neighborhood commercial existing, which is maybe a little bit different, and it also had access to it off 600 East versus Nichols Drive could be addressed at a later stage at zoning or during the conditional use permit process as well.
Yeah, and as I thought about that, Councilman Staley, as I thought about this, because we are just looking at a general plan amendment, so we're not even looking at necessarily traffic issues, you know, the access to the property and those types of things. And as I thought through it, whether whether that was something that I could feel comfortable just doing the master plan change and then dealing with those traffic issues later on, secondary access, whether it was through another piece or whatever. I just think that when you when you change the general plan, you better know what's gonna happen. And right now, if we change the general plan to say that it's neighborhood commercial, what's there is what's there. And it sets the precedence, and so for me, that's where I was at. And like I said, this hasn't been an easy decision. I've gone both ways.
Well, and the question is simply, should that 2 acres be rezoned to neighborhood commercial?
Right.
I look at the Old Fields Road, any use of that lower parcel, traffic is gonna increase on the Old Fields Road no matter what, and if the landowner were to develop it on a grand scale like he's mentioned, that could become a fairly busy road, especially if it connects over to the Fields Road eventually. And so I think the property owners are gonna have to deal with the fact that that road's gonna be busier than they like, unless it always remains a dirt pad. And so the question really is that a good site to turn into neighborhood commercial? And the neighbors have been very persuasive in their opposition. It's also quite persuasive that it sits right next to a neighborhood commercial parcel. I struggle to see how it's in the middle of a neighborhood. I can see how the road ends there, but to me, as I've perceived it over the years, it always seems to be offset from the neighborhood. But I can understand the neighbors' positions that it feels like it's in the middle of their neighborhood. I would like to mention that I appreciate the little sidewalk on the corner there that goes to nowhere. I think the whole corner's got some issues, and we just got to decide whether that's an appropriate spot for neighborhood commercial or not. The next step after neighborhood commercials, we get to what we saw earlier today, is you get to plans and plat type stuff where you get to have another arm wrestle about it.
Any comment, Councilman Turk?
Mayor, what are your thoughts?
Well, I like the idea. I do. I like both sides. But I'm going to default to the council because you're the decision makers. And I like Sean, I like his family. I know he would do an excellent job. I think I agree with all of you. Yeah, I mean, it's tough to say yay or nay. I would go with it if you voted for it. I know our good neighbors wouldn't. But that's your decision, and I agree with Councilman Segmiller too. I think there's some issues there in that corner that I'd like to help Ralph and Catherine. If we need to resolve something, resolve it, and because I'm for property rights. If I had some land and wanted to do something with it, I would want to be able to do whatever I wanted to do with it. I don't have that luxury in my life, but. I do have a flag lot in the back. If I wanted to put a pizza parlor back there, I'd probably want but that's my thoughts.
Well, in that case,
So can I just ask this question, Drew? If we approve the master plan change today, the zone change would come back. Is that the time when you start talking about access and things like that? Is that the stuff or is this?
You could ask the
most
question at that
appropriate?
point, how's this gonna be accessed? Sure, you could.
Or is this when we need to have that figured out?
I don't know, I think it is more appropriate at the zone stage than maybe now. Again, this is a general, land use designation. That I use that term general on purpose because it is
Right.
that's what they are, is the general ideas on that. When a zone change does come, you can be a lot more specific about, why the zone change and how, address those access and things like that, probably most appropriate at that time.
Okay.
And then I guess though, once you made that land use designation change, then the whole world says this really is neighborhood commercial in the plan, and so maybe we put in a video rental store if Sean decides not to go forward with the
Correct.
mortuary or anything else in there, and that definitely is less consistent than what his proposal is.
Right, and that's a good
So-
point, is that when you do change it to that general plan, then all of a sudden their options for changing of zoning from whatever it is now, would only be administrative professional or a C1 would be the only options to do a zone change, other than leaving it whatever it's zoned right now.
So let me ask you this question. Let's say, for instance, that everything gets approved and they build this beautiful facility up there, and in 10 years,
Goes out of business
yes,
or sells or.
or something. Does it have to stay the same, or at that point, anything could go in, correct?
No, because he will have to come back and zone it, you know, either administrative professional, which is what I'd recommend if he is doing the funeral home. That's what I would strongly say. That's the only thing we want to, because again, that's your least, you know, harsh of your
Mhm.
commercial zones.
Okay.
That you could, you know, just go to that zone.
So then it could be converted into office space.
It
or
could only
something
then
like
be
that.
office space or things that fall within that. Now, again, he has to go for a conditional use permit still, because it's not anything that's labeled,
Okay.
but it's close to. We do allow medical places in an AP, and so we're gonna go for a conditional use permit under that other, because it's not listed anywhere else. And so we then let the planning commission, again, the conditional use permit would be totally on the planning commission's shoulders. The city council gave that to them
Right.
when it came for that purpose, but again, that would just be for that business.
Okay.
But the zoning would have to come in, and I would strongly recommend, if this is the line that we're gonna follow, that we'd only let him apply for an AP, and you could justify why that's why you feel only an AP can go here, because of the proximity to, say, a residential neighborhood. You could make that as a city council, I think, stand strongly behind that.
Okay.
That helps.
Anybody want to take a stab at it?
Yeah, I'd be happy to make a motion. I will move that we approve an ordinance adopting the general plan amendment request G-13-03 to change zoning designation from low density to neighborhood commercial.
Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second.
Truman, A.
Seg Miller, aye.
Turek, aye.
Okay, that passes 3-2.
I understand that you guys don't protect neighborhoods, you have so much land in the fields. It's totally baffling me. Thank you for your support, Ron, and all. Crest shouldn't have even been allowed to vote, it is his uncle's land, just saying.
Shouldn't be allowed to vote on the utility rates either, because he uses them.
He uses it.
Okay, thank you.
Now, Mayor, if I may, your agenda got misprinted on this particular item. If you notice, it should be community commercial, not neighborhood commercial on your, but it's been
Which
it's
one?
been
It
advertised
was
as.
advertised correctly.
It was advertised correctly as the community commercial to the personal handouts, and the planning commission had it that way, so I apologize for that. And, so this is a request for community commercial, not neighborhood on this one.
Are you talking on this next one here? Okay. Public hearing for consideration to approve an amendment to the general plan, request G-13-04 to change the zoning designation from low density to community commercial for property located at 4200 South Washington Fields Road, applicant Bryce Gibby.
Thank you, Mayor. As stated, the applicant is seeking this general plan land use amendment. The requested area covers 13.47 acres. As stated, the current land use designation is low-density residential. The applicant is seeking approval to have the land use designation changed to the community commercial, or the CCOM designation as outlined in the general plan. The applicant is wishing to amend this parcel for future commercial growth in the area and along a major road in the southern portion of the city. They're also interested in expanding of the current greenhouse business that is at the location, the Sandia Green, I guess nursery is what it's called. I hope we'll clarify that. The current surrounding general plan land use designations around this proposal are low-density residential to the east, west, and the south, and neighborhood commercial to the north. The Planning Commission reviewed the request at their June 5th meeting of this year. The Planning Commission unanimously recommended approval of G-1304 to amend the general plan land use map as outlined above and shown in your exhibit. And I'll glad to answer any questions council might have on this proposal.
As far as the expansion of the existing business, is it necessary to have a community commercial to do that? Where they are, I don't know what it's zoned right now where you're doing the nursery business. Do you have to have? Okay. So do you need to change to community commercial to do an expansion of the business?
I think rather it would be a natural growth.
Bryce, come on up. Yeah.
And to answer your question, the greenhouse is now in agricultural zoning, and but the greenhouse would never expand to be 13.47 acres. But there's a natural. This is a natural property for this type of use. That in 2007, the city approached us. There's been a change of guard since then, so this little bit of history might be beneficial to know. But the city approached us as we had gone before the city with a plan of development of the property that is known as Cardiff Wells property, 160 acres, in conjunction with Gardner Development. And the city was aware that the school board wanted to expand their property and make it more less rectangular and more square. And so we postponed our development plans, and we worked with the school board and with the city, and the highway master plan was changed. And so the existing Washington Fields Road, as you see there now on the right side of that drawing, was planned. And then there was another road that was planned to go from the intersection, as you see on the bottom of that checkered area. And that road extends to the west and forms the southern boundary of the new school board property. And so you have the school board property on the west. You have a proposed highway on the south, and you have a major thoroughfare on the east. And it was discussed at that time that that community commercial would be an excellent use for this property. And actually I thought it was incorporated in the master plan, but I had some health concerns and was kind of out of pocket for a while and didn't find out until fairly recently that the master plan zoning needed to be amended for this purpose. But and so as you look at that property, that we do foresee that at some point there would be a need for additional commercial, and that a garden center on the south end, which would be a natural outgrowth of the greenhouse business, would be a very logical thing to happen. There's not an immediate plan for that, and I believe we'd have to have anchor tenants in place. We'd have to go way beyond this master planning phase to be able to tie how we'd do that down. But it would be ultimately would be a growth of the existing greenhouse. You can kind of see where the greenhouses are right now, and then if you were to look right up here, show them the northern boundary. Okay, that's the northern boundary, and so that again we could foresee a village-like plan where the southern portion that would be the garden center, the greenhouses, and then other things might come into the north end as the market demands.
I'm asking these questions not because I'm opposed to it, just trying to find out
Of course.
what the future holds. And I guess you're coming in with a lower version of commercial. We're not looking at a Walmart type store eventually out there or anything like
Well,
that.
the property size restricts that. This would not be a good parking lot for a Walmart, and so community commercial is pretty liberal, but the size of the property would make it conservative. And the types of things we would envision would be something that would be very very synergetic with the school plans. The school has a wonderful plan for that property to the west, and we would want to have it be a beautiful part. And of course, we plan to have residential from the greenhouse south ultimately there, and so we'd want it to be a nice gateway into a residential community. It's also very natural because on the north end, the Andreses do have commercial property. And so it just seems to be a very nice fit. Again, I would have come forward a little bit sooner to amend the master plan had I been aware that this wasn't zoned that way. But I think it's historically that I think all parties have been in agreement this would be a good use of the property. Any other questions you might have for me?
No, being on that committee a couple of years ago, I think we would have changed it to the community commercial if we'd known that's what the property owner wanted. I think that it's early enough out there that we should try and accommodate the people who own the land, because there's not a whole lot out there yet, so.
Right.
Well, thank you very much.
Yeah, and we need good commercial property, and there's gotta be a major thoroughfare out there eventually, so. it's probably a
Absolutely,
good
with the
fit.
airport and everything, yeah, it's a good use.
There's already a thriving business there during the Blue Angels visit. There's a lot
Yeah,
of
if we would have
trade-
charged, $10
lot
a
of
car,
trade
we could have
conducted right
retired.
there.
Again, this is a public hearing. Anybody else want to? Any other additional comments from the council?
Seeing no one, Mayor, I'll make the motion that we close the public hearing.
There's a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Motion and a second. Anybody want to?
Turek, aye.
Seg Miller, aye.
Hudson, aye.
Staley, aye.
Truman, aye.
Thank you, gentlemen.
You know, we've had a long night when we're starting to disagree about closing public hearings.
Yeah. All right, item D, consideration to approve an ordinance adopting the general plan amendment request, G-13-04, to change zoning designation from LD to NCOM.
I'll make a,
Community commercial,
It's
not
community
NCO.
commercial, excuse me, community commercial.
I'll make a motion that we approve an ordinance adopting the general plan amendment request G-13-04 to change zoning designation from, it was already neighborhood commercial to community commercial?
It's low density currently, and we're changing it to community commercial. I'll
Okay.
second that.
Motion and a second.
Councilman Turek, aye.
Seg Miller, aye.
Hudson, aye.
Staley, aye.
Truman, aye.
Thank you, gentlemen. Another public hearing for
Thanks for waiting. Thanks for going through all that for us, guys.
You're well-informed citizens now.
Public hearing for consideration of selling certain real property owned by the city and thereafter to take steps to sell such property. Property is being considered for sale to the immediately adjacent real property owners based upon independent professional appraisal values. Property is approximately .086 acres, located on the southwest border of Green Springs Park at approximately 1775 North Green Spring Drive, Washington, Utah. Roger Carter.
Can I sneak to the restroom? Be right back.
I forgot. Mr. Belliston is here with us this evening, and I just wanted to kind of point those parcels out. And so we have these 5 parcels here, and then we have another 3 there, and then there's a small piece that exists just between there, which is a common way between the subdivision and the park. And as we discussed last time, this is another piece that they will purchase from us. On that, it's about 1,000 square feet. Anyway, it's a total of about 34,900 square feet, and that consists of lots 69 to 72 and lots 100 to lots 103. This is not considered a significant parcel, and it is recommended that we approve the sale of this land. So that
Help me understand, we've talked about this in a couple other meetings. Was that just tonight's the night when we finally approve? Okay.
Yeah, so what, I'm trying to remember how we exactly explained this to Mr. Belliston. We'll have the public hearing this evening, and then the council, based upon that public hearing, can make we've got a resolution before you that could say, yes, we're not going to move forward with it.
Has there a written resolution for this?
Did,
While these gentlemen are studying that, this is a public hearing. We'll open up to any comments, questions, concerns.
I don't have any comments or concerns unless I need to address
Yeah.
something from
Anybody want to
the
address a
council here.
comment to Troy?
You've sat here for a long
state
time.
your name.
My name's Troy Belliston.
You better have something good to say.
You've sat through a lot of stuff.
It doesn't appear as that I have much opposition, so.
Mr. Belliston has really been good to work with, and of course, we put a lot of burden on these property owners that request this. They have to provide the title reports, they have to provide the appraisals, they have to provide, and then we review that, and of course, in this case, they had to do a subdivision plat amendment as well.
We looked at it, and I think we brought it up before. It's a strip of property that the city has not landscaped and is between the homes and the park. I mean, it's essentially landlocked for anybody. You know, homeowners like to purchase it, extend their lots out, and utilize that landscape it, things like that, so.
But we do appreciate the work that you've done on it and going through all the hoops to make it
I hope the
able to
homeowners do.
happen. So hopefully it's a benefit for the city and for the homeowners as well.
Yep. So,
I think the most shocking thing for the homeowners is how long these processes take at times, but I think they do,
Yes, it is.
I do think that they do understand that these are publicly held properties, and so there is a process to it.
yeah. The plats right now, you know, are being circulated. American Secure Title did the title work. I think everybody's ready to go once the city says, you know, go to close and be done, so.
Mayor, if there's no other discussion, I'd make the motion that we close the public hearing.
I'll second that.
Motion and a second to close our public hearing.
Councilman Turek, aye.
Seg Miller, aye.
Councilman Hudson, aye.
Staley, aye.
Truman, aye.
Okay, consideration to approve a resolution authorizing the intent to consider selling certain real property owned by the city and thereafter to take steps to sell such property located at approximately 1775 North Green Spring Drive.
Mayor, I'd make the motion that we've discussed it. Legal counsel's provided us a written draft of the resolution, and that we would, the motion would be to approve a resolution authorizing the intent to consider selling certain real property not amounting to a significant parcel.
Second.
Motion and a second.
Councilman Turek, aye.
Seg Miller, aye.
Hudson, aye.
Staley, aye.
Truman, aye.
Thank you, gentlemen, that passes. Item 9, agreements, consideration to approve an energy service performance contract with Siemens Industrial, Inc.
Let me,
Mark,
nice.
go
Save that big one for
if I could start with that.
ahead. Go ahead.
I think I explained to the council as I began to review this agreement, I recognized that there were two issues that I think was important for us to address. One is, as you can well appreciate, the contract is very heavily engineer. It's very, very heavy on the engineering side, and I realized that was above my pay grade pretty quickly. Second of all, I think it's important, and I think the council has felt this way, that it's very important that as we move into a contract in which performance measurements are taken to determine savings, that we have some independent verification that the one who's doing the performance measurement is also not the one guaranteeing the savings. And so because of that, and I've really been satisfied with with bringing in Sunrise Engineering, who has that expertise, who essentially represent Washington City as the engineers. And I wanted to include in the material I got to you yesterday, for a very specific purpose, the correspondence and discussions that have occurred between the city's representative engineer and Siemens, so that you could see that I think we were benefited by having their expertise, especially from the contract point of view. So we had Sunrise Engineering review the contract. They are comfortable with the contract in those and and even in those areas where they know that verification is going to be a big task on the part of Siemens, they're very comfortable with how conservative Siemens numbers were, that they felt that Siemens, in many cases, that we should, as a city, actually see savings much greater in many of those cases than Siemens has even indicated. So from an engineering standpoint, Sunrise Engineering was fine with the contract, but the changes proposed by them to be incorporated in the contract. And then from a legal standpoint, I maybe could have just Council Starkey comment on that, because he looked at it from the legal point of view. Do you have anything? Yeah. So.
There really wasn't much. The reality is the agreement, the base terms of the legal part of it really just incorporated everything, all the engineer language and the other three exhibits, and so getting our engineers to say, yeah, I get it, it's verifiable, this is kind of a sure deal, basically the way it's been drafted up, was most of what I needed to hear or see from it.
Did you enjoy that 42-page exhibit?
Oh, my word. I still hurt.
I did.
Still aching from it.
So we are deleting from this, though, the salt system?
Not
chlorine
yet.
Generator?
What we wanted to do is we're having some conflictory discussion right now, and it's not from Siemens so much as from our pool people. One side says that this could create a void issue for the chlorine generator. The other says it does not create. So what we wanted to do is just make the council aware that that is an ongoing discussion. Certainly, the addition of the chlorine generator is significant to us. We want that.
Yeah, because of all the maintenance problems with the ozone.
Exactly. And so, hoping that that still is the case, then the numbers that's been run are there for you and no change. But in the event that we do find that it could be corrosive on the liner or those type of things, and we have to pull that out, we ask Siemens to present that in that scenario as well. So, Councilman Truman, we don't have a real answer yet, but we wanted to give you both stories so that you had a clear understanding of what's going on with that. And one of the reasons that Siemens, of course, has been anxious to push kind of the financial package of this thing is, as you know, interest rates are going up. And those interest rates do impact kind of the savings on this issue. So that's why I've also asked Siemens to provide to you, which was in your package, kind of an interest rate sensitivity analysis. But as you can see from the 3 bids, finance bids we got, we do hit the proposed interest rate that Siemens had put in their proposal.
I have a question, Roger. Page 2, I see that there was a date crossed out, and used to be the 10th of July 2013, and it was written the 17th of July 2014.
Yeah, it's just probably an error there.
Something else we
Should be
can
2013.
cross out?
Yeah.
Yeah, in fact, I think we tried to put in, because we were waiting for some of those documents to be redrafted, especially on from the engineer side.
Thought it,
Just to replace that whole thing.
thought it would take.
We've asked Mark to come back a lot, but that's a long ways away.
Were we thinking the engineers would take till 2013 or the attorneys?
What's that?
Were we thinking the engineers would delay till 2014 or the attorneys?
No.
Oh, the engineers have been prompt.
I think that was an error, right? That was an error, right?
That might have been a trick question.
Sorry.
I want to talk about section 4.7 if we can. It's the performance guarantee and what it's dependent upon. And it's stated quite strongly and clearly there that the performance guarantee will terminate immediately and essentially become void and of no force if the city doesn't comply with the PASP during the performance guarantee period. And that's the PASP has a meaning I can't remember right offhand, but essentially that refers to the 42-page exhibit. My concern is that we make sure that we are able and capable of making that performance, because if the performance guarantee is potentially going to become null and void, I think the contract becomes much less attractive.
One thing to bear in mind, I think Mark's probably going to be able to go
been so conservative that even if we didn't have the guarantee, we'd still meet our milestones. And so it's kind of like the Affordable Health Care Act. We don't care what's in the language, let's just push it through. And
That's worked out well, hasn't it?
That is delving into how the debt included, yeah. I mean, that part of it is especially the engineers are looking at.
It's getting
they're
late.
looking at saying, well, what risk is there? Almost like that was a bad
Yeah.
thing. You guys have any risk. You're gonna save the city money, clearly you're gonna save the city money.
Well, I think,
There's already risk out there.
I think also a little bit to that point is, yeah, I think that we want to make sure we understand this. And that's one of the reasons we kind of put the team together that we did. I don't know how many other cities, when I called Mark, I was afraid that Mark was going to tip right over. When I called him, when the council had approved to move ahead with this, and I called him and said, you got to hold on a minute. We've got to get somebody in here that understands this engineering stuff. And if that slows you down, well, it slows you down, but that's the way it's going to be right now. And Mark was great about it. Mark didn't even bat an eye, but, you know, I don't know how many other cities probably took that kind of protective stance on this issue. So even though I may not understand all of the Affordable Health Care Act, I certainly want to have somebody on my side who does. That's where Sunrise, I think, has come in substantially and helpful. But maybe Mark can also address specifically, but that is true what Council Starkey said. You know, one of the real benefits we're going to have, one of the real pluses we're going to have, the lighting issue is just really almost a no-brainer. I mean, it really is. The lighting's a huge component of this thing, and the control systems really are benchmarks that we'll hit fairly reasonably. But you want to answer maybe Councilman Segmiller's?
But we certainly want to make sure our guys do with those steps. I mean, our guys have got to still be doing steps. I mean, or otherwise it doesn't make much sense if we go through all the trouble. They're not doing the basic stuff that they need to do. I agree.
It's on. Oh, what's on?
There's a fine line that we all walk when it comes to these projects, and that is, we prefer to err on the side of conservative, but not so much that it reduces the amount of work that a city can do under this performance assurance kind of a process. What was interesting to me during the process is we, excuse me, had several phone conversations with Sunrise Engineering and Jeff and Roger, was almost the surprise, I guess, by Sunrise Engineering that we were taking as conservative of approach as we were, because I think in their industry they're used to seeing kind of a more aggressive approach in terms of what's considered and what the savings might be. You know, our desire is that we under promise and over deliver. It's good for the city and it's good for us. So from that standpoint, we, and I think Roger indicated that Sunrise Engineering is very comfortable with the calculations, with the methodology, with the approach to this agreement. So if there, you know, I don't know if that kind of answered the question. I hope it did. If there's more to that, let me know.
And let me ask you this, Mark, with the changes that Sunrise was recommending, and I haven't asked you this since our conversation of yesterday, with all those changes, are there any concerns from your side, the Siemens side or the legal side, with any of those recommended changes? Because one of the things we would ask the council to do is if the council says, you know, we're comfortable moving ahead, I would ask the council to say moving ahead based upon the recommendations of those changes being implemented as recommended by our attorney and our basically who's representing our city engineer.
So those changes have been incorporated into the exhibits. They have been reviewed from our national operations team, which is a requirement of our energy engineers to get that review and that buy-off. That buy-off has taken place. The red line changes that were made to the exhibits have also been forwarded to Siemens Legal, so that's really, frankly, the last hurdle. Mr. Starkey sent that to our city attorney, or our attorney, our corporate counsel, Keith Graham, and so now it's in his queue to do the review. But since he knows that those changes to the exhibits have been approved by our national operations group, You know, as long as he doesn't have any legal language heartburn with the language that our energy engineers and national ops proposed, shouldn't be a problem.
Do we know, Roger? Clearly, just to get the contract understood, we had to hire an engineer over the life of the term to comply with some of these requirements so that the guarantee and such remain valid. How much more engineering consultation? Do we need another employee? How are we
No.
gonna keep up with all this?
No, I think, you know, first of all, of course, this is built in such a way as that, because they had to defeat their own model if you had to hire people to come in and do this. Siemens, of course, will be working with us to meet the standards set up in the agreement. And that kind of puts them on the hook a little bit too as well, because they're requiring us, they're kind of working with us in order to do what we need to do to make the contract work. So we're not projecting, even as I've gone through it, we're not projecting with what needs to be implemented to hire anybody else, nor do we, unless we have just a question that might come up, I don't see us really using a lot of engineering expertise on that. Where I do want to use the engineering expertise is in the annual performance reviews. And that is when they come in and they do those annual performance reviews and say, well, this is what you are saving. I want our engineer to be able to bounce that off of, to be able to say, well, are they correct? Because again, not that I think that they would do this, but they're also the ones guaranteeing those savings. So they're doing the review, they're guaranteeing the savings. I just want a third-party independent. So I would recommend that Sunrise at least stay engaged with us on those annual reviews. But as far as implementation, what we need to do, it's in their best interest to show us what we need to do once those are put in place, because they've got to meet that as well. And but if we have questions, we'd probably use Sunrise. But I don't see us needing an employee, nor having an ongoing commitment to Sunrise Engineering with respect to it.
And if I can just add a little to that, that's really standard practice. That's something that we are accustomed to, that there's third-party involvement, both in verifying the contract and the technical energy audit, as well as verifying the M&V after the fact throughout the term of the project.
So we trust Siemens. We'll just verify.
Sure.
Yeah, and I guess I just want to make certain we don't spend too much money to ensure contract compliance, and we eat away a lot of our savings, you know.
Well,
Like that,
The impression I got was it wasn't that much, but that was nice to know within that it wasn't that much, because otherwise, I was concerned that, you know, it was gonna be, in my house, you know, if we get our salt tube treaty, and we're not gonna enter the new one because nobody can verify whether the Russians really increased their nuclear weapons, because they were saying, of course we did.
Yeah.
Why would we lie to you?
Trust me.
Why would we lie to you? And of course I did that, and the phones went dead. On like 6 lines went dead automatically. So we got back on. I said, "Well, that's what I get for, you know, making jokes when everybody knows the NSA's listening to it." Boom, they went down again.
Yeah, probably half of them didn't even know what the SALT II treaty was. But
Well, that's what we get for behind 19-year-olds to work for NSA.
Councilman Truman, I think that had we had probably this electrical engineering expertise in-house, that's where we would have gotten this service from. And then you wouldn't have seen a real direct cost, which larger cities, of course, probably do have more capability for that. And so, yes, this will be truly an additional cost associated with it. But what they've committed to do what they've done so far has not been significant. And I don't think, again, other than those annual reviews, we'll see too much of a significance. And I certainly think it's a good safeguard for the city.
Would it be all right if I address the chlorine generator issue as well,
that'd
just
be
for a
great.
moment?
You'd address it better than I would, probably.
Some recent information, what we learned was, what we didn't know, was that the pool is a stainless steel lined pool. So the question really is, if the chlorine generator has a negative impact on the warranty of the stainless steel lined porcelain covered pool. And again, there's some conflict on that. So what we provided to you in Exhibit B, which is really the exhibit that outlines the amount of the project, we've actually provided both scenarios. Either we leave it at the original scenario that was proposed, if the chlorine generator goes in. If we eliminate the chlorine generator, then that's the second proposed amount that we've given you. It's still at 3% within the term that we've discussed. not quite as well, and that's because there were some savings associated, or there are some savings associated with the chlorine generator. But we can remove that measure, and the project still cash flows based on what the
Will you
documents.
just work directly with our pool manager and
Absolutely.
department head there? And
Yeah, we've had
make
lots
your
of
best judgment?
conversations. Ben and Barry and I are new best friends, at least as far as that issue's concerned.
Hopefully they're almost as close as you are with us now. 'cause it's been long hours put in there.
Well, and interesting, we had several partners involved in the pool structure, and that's where the conflict is coming. So we just need to sift through that a little bit and find out, who has the right word on that.
And I know-
Regardless of the outcome of that, you have contract language that would apply to either scenario.
And I know we're gonna do this, we just wanna make certain that we don't create a maintenance problem by switching to the chlorine generator. I know when we talked about this before, I have the salt system in my own personal pool, and after talking to pool people, I saw the corrosive nature in the pipes and stuff and switched back, so just wanna make certain that whatever we do is not gonna create a new maintenance problem.
We feel the very same way.
I'm sorry,
Ready to
Mayor.
do
Really ready for this?
Let's do
Well,
it.
we were actually in a public hearing, I'm sorry about that, I probably should have saved some of that, but,
No, we're not in the public hearing right now.
oh, that's right. We've had so many public hearings tonight, why wouldn't we? Let's go ahead and have a public hearing on this tonight.
Open it up, anybody wanna
Jeez.
comment?
Last second if you'd
I'm
like.
not getting there.
Can I touch on one other issue too, and that is the issue of, we did get 3 finance bids on the proposal, and this is for 1.662, 148. We also, again, we have a financial advisor, so we didn't rely upon Siemens, even though they went out and solicited the bids. We did not rely upon them to go through the analysis. We did that with Alan Weston-Sco, whom you all know. Anyway, it is recommended that we would go with Siemens Financial, who had the best interest rate for us. And if we don't have to, if once the bids are let, and we don't have to use the whole 1.6, then we just prepay that. But so from that standpoint, what we would like to do, council, is we'd like the council, if they would, to approve the contract based upon the recommendations, the recommendations by the engineer and the attorney are implemented in the contract, and that we move forward with securing the financial bid and firming up the financial bid with Siemens. Our only concern is the time interest rates are moving on us.
Gotta hit that button. I'd make a motion that we approve the energy service performance contract with Siemens Industrial Inc., so long as Siemens incorporates the suggestions and recommendations by our engineering company and the other items that have been provided by legal counsel, along with moving forward with the financing to get this project going.
A second.
Motion and a second.
Councilman Turk, aye.
Seg Miller, nay.
Hudson, aye.
Staley, aye.
Truman, aye.
Okay, that passes 4-1. Thank you, gentlemen. Item B, consideration to approve an agreement for the concession stand at the community center.
I hope they have something for us to sample tonight. Sorry, I was a little off
So
topic.
I'm straight, is this a public hearing? Or are we okay on this one?
Does this agreement exist,
I
Roger?
haven't seen it.
You have to talk into the microphone. My wife keeps texting me and telling me she can't hear anything when you talk.
Well, that just, yeah, I can guarantee my wife's not gonna call and say that. She's gonna say, don't tell him, we can't hear him. Oh, hello?
I've had 4 hours to figure it out. He's just now getting into it.
So, and now, Council Hudson, I was gonna get a hold of you to see if this is you oversee all this stuff from the council's perspective, whether you wanted just to kind of explain it to them, the rest of the council, how you came to it, what you're doing, or if you want me, or even Ben, or Barry to do it, that's fine too.
Well, we all know that we've had discussions over the last couple of years that we'd like to try and outsource some of these concessions areas, maybe to private businesses, let them try and make some money, maybe find a way to streamline some of the services we provide. The concessions area up at the community center hasn't been one of those that we've had a lot of interest in the past, but we do have a company that is very interested in it now. We feel like it can provide additional revenue above and beyond what we've been able to bring in managing the concessions ourselves, along with being able to eliminate a huge headache of managing the concessions by ourselves. And so it would alleviate a little bit of time for our pool manager to kind of focus on the pool service rather than the concessions area. So
The applicant, they're a little pizza
yeah,
business?
Mama Knows Pizza. They have a little state-of-the-art thing where they can cook a pizza in 90 seconds supposedly, and it's hot and pretty cool. And they have a couple locations, or one location or two, I don't know, in Fabulous Freddy's.
They go on a Bluff.
Fabulous Freddy's on Bluff Street, and so they feel like this would be a good spot to add a secondary location, and they're excited and hoping to get moving on it pretty quickly.
Do we know if they would offer a full range then of concessions similar to what is currently being offered?
And I'm gonna ask Ben to come up and he can explain some of that for us.
And I think that's part of what the RFP went out and what we're hoping that they're gonna come back in and do too. By the way, Council Staley, was did you enjoy the pizza? Did you like it okay?
That was good.
Yeah.
I was getting all over my fingers, but
Like
it was
8.5
good.
It still takes
Nice
about
and,
8 minutes to put the pizza together though. When I've timed it,
Sure.
man, they're done. You go in and order it, you got a full pizza in like 10 minutes and it's piping hot.
Yeah, that's from the time you order for them to prepare it right there and to cook it 10 minutes. So, their plan is to continue offering the concession things that we do now, but they'll have the pizza as well as they're going to have salads. They're going to do subs and trying to think what else. I think they were going to do some frozen yogurt or some other options as well. So it will greatly expand the offerings that our patrons have coming in, and I think Councilman Hudson hit on some of the biggest points. Was it frees me up as the aquatics manager to spend more time on aquatics, and it will be a net revenue gain for us in the community center.
The lease agreement, is it 1 year, 2 year? Is it month to month?
Well, based on what we've done with our others, I would assume we're going to go with a 1 year lease agreement. So
Yeah, and right now I've drafted kind of like the swim was. We can do it first year, kind of gives an idea of what's going on. If we like it and they're liking it, they can request it. We'll just keep rolling it if we want to. And hopefully the incentive is for them to just do a great business for our guests there, because they'll be going out and selling a lot of food.
Yeah.
Is our rent gonna be based on one space plus to a percentage of sales?
The way we had it, I think the way we had it set up was just a flat fee, not a percentage. Sometimes with those percentage of sales, it's really hard to track the sales, and then you got to go in and hope that they keep good receipts and that kind of stuff. We felt like the numbers that the proposal that they presented to us, the numbers came up net positive above what we're already doing, and so why make it more difficult than we really needed to?
Plus, we were looking at just I don't know if you mentioned this, a 1 year
yes.
lease, which, sometimes we wade into these a little bit and see how they work out.
And it seems like we did that with one of our, either gymnastics or somebody, when we started out, we tried to do that percentage, kind of a net also, and it became just so problematic from just managing the finances of it. It did, I don't think it
We're
paid.
afraid we'd have to hire an engineering firm.
Yeah.
Probably an accounting firm for
Yeah,
that.
but Marv Wilson over there going, I don't know, I understand.
Obviously usually in the big businesses, it's all based on that, but I guess this is so small, we don't think it's worth the penciling for it.
But nothing says,
There's nothing says that we
find out
couldn't
they're
do
making,
that.
just money hand over fist, and then nobody's swimming anymore, just sitting back and eating pizza and salad.
And gaining weight.
Yeah, what might change
Well,
that?
and I think things would change too if we had multiple companies looking at making offers on it. We have one company at this point, and maybe we should take advantage of what we got.
Yeah, there's a gear for, I think their product line, at least their delivery system, probably lends itself to just jump right in, be able to do it, and,
Yeah.
That may be something added to their ability to do it that way.
And they've been very good. We've already partnered with them on a couple of our events when we've done special events, and it's been quite a hit. And they've been very, very good to work with.
I'm gonna say, I like the idea of partnering with private sector. I think is what we need to do more over there, is get the private sector involved and taking the risk and running the show, and I think that's a good move.
That popped over just twice in the last week, just kind of to see what their operation was, you know. And I remember telling at least their employees and those that I just ran into on the days I ran into them, it seemed like it blended well with Washington City and our community center. So I think what we've got to do though is come back, because I need to go over with Ben all the particulars on the draft I have, and I got to tell you, the last 48 hours, I've gotten a little bit squishy in the edges of getting this back to Ben.
Are they wanting to move forward fairly quickly so we could
They
approve
are.
tonight, and then you could draft and maybe just
That's what
bounce
I'd
it off of you?
recommend.
Let's
Yeah.
do that.
I'd
They were
recommend-
ready 2 weeks ago to
Yeah,
really get started.
let's get
so.
it going. We're confident that you can put together a contract, and Councilman Hudson, probably where he sits on that committee, could probably just review that, and maybe
Well,
one
you've
of the
got the-
attorneys.
You've already got to get that good standard that you've got from the last swimming agreement. I think works really well. With the short term, we can extend it a year if we want to. As long as Ben can just kind of go through and go, yeah, we did need one of this, but not that. I think we'll be fine.
Okay, let's do it. Then I'll make the motion that we approve an agreement for the concession stand at the community center with Mama Knows Pizza.
Motion and
I'll second the motion.
Just to be clear, we're not approving the agreement, we're just approving that there will be an agreement, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
And would we add that maybe subject to a few council members' review of that?
You do it how you want to, but
Should
it'll
we
be
add
the
that-
next
can we add that
day
into
or
the-
two, you'll be seeing
Subject
final.
to the final contract being approved by 3 council members or more.
we did have a second,
I'll
correct?
second that.
All right, motion and a second.
Truman, I.
Staley, aye.
Hudson, aye.
Segmiller, aye.
Turek, aye.
All right, thank you, gentlemen. Report, any reports tonight?
I report that this meeting's gone long enough.
Any city manager report?
I'm not going to go over any project updates, but I do want to just bring up one item that next week you've got kind of a interesting schedule, as you all are aware, with your public forum, and then you've got another matter that you'll be discussing as well for next week. But one of the things that we need to have and that we did not get done was a public hearing, and it does not have to be associated with the city council, but a public hearing to apply for the grant associated with the Community Impact Board money. Okay, let me remind you what that was. We were applying for a grant. It's not a loan at this point. This is the grant to do a study on a public safety building. And what we failed to realize is that we needed a public hearing to just tell the public, we want to file this application for the grant, and are there any concerns? And so in talking to Denise, what we'd like to do, because I couldn't imagine it's going to be, well, I'm certainly hoping that it's not going to be like a real tough public hearing, but what we'd like to propose is that we set that at 6 p.m. on Tuesday as well. It could only take 2 minutes, so we would just have to hold that other item you have at 6 p.m. for just a couple minutes, but then we meet the tenets of that requirement. Any concerns with that?
Maybe I got the days wrong.
Could be when, which one is it?
Because I have the public,
It's
you
Tuesday.
guys have a public forum, right, on one of those days?
It's Tuesday the 20th. Yeah, I couldn't remember where the 24th was. So if you're okay with that, then just, I wanted to bring that to your attention.
Yeah, that should be good.
Okay, other
And we
than
can
that.
sneak over for the luau afterwards.
Hey, Roger, one quick question. The fencing along Industrial Road, it's been the subject of many little car mishaps over time, so it's getting real mangled. I saw one the other day. Is that a city, is the fence? Yeah, there was a nice little white car that had been clear, it was clear down in the pasture, the cows were looking at it and having fun. But,
I
is
don't
that
think
fencing-
that was, Mike would
Is
know
that-
more on that.
Is that fencing our responsibility, or is that the landowner's?
Mike would know more on that because of the way we
fencing.
The
negotiated.
fencing over the box culvert is ours. The rest of fencing along the whole road is Kirkland's.
The angled fencing. is not ours.
Do we know who the person is that crashed into it?
Yes,
Their
Yes.
insurance should
yes.
handle
Yeah,
it.
they,
See,
You might
and
know him.
There's
Yeah, and
probably-
we've already contacted Kirkland's to go ahead and repair that over the box culvert.
Well, but there's the box culvert, and then there's probably 5 or 6 spots along the main
There is,
fence.
but that's the Kirkland's
theirs.
responsibility, yes.
That's what happens when you build meandering roads and people like to text.
Is that it, Roger? Okay.
Texting would be a lot easier
I
if
know
our roads
Councilman
were straight.
Starkey, you had a reason
not
for us to
true.
go to a closed session, and what was the reason?
Yeah. Character, individual.
Okay. All right. With that,
I would move that we move to our closed session for item A, the character or professional competence of an individual.
Second.
Truman, aye.
Staley, aye.
Segmiller, aye.
Turek, aye.
okay, why don't we take a 5-minute break, gentlemen?